Yes, it is time on a Thursday morning. Time for you and me and Phumi Mashiho to do all of the things that we do on a Thursday morning that gets your day started and gets everything off to a great start. That's the same thing, isn't it? I think it is. Here she is, Phumi Mashiho. Hello, Phums.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Shame, poor Phumi. She's arrived to suffering, great suffering. She arrived at the studio and Simpiwe has apparently turned the aircon right the way down, so it's freezing. She also can't find any coffee anywhere. Poor Phumi. I mean, I feel terrible for you. You go all the way into the studio because you had to get dressed in the dark at home. And you're like, oh, well.
I even went to the McDonald's to see if I can get like a cup of coffee, right?
Mm-hmm.
The McDonald's only opens at 6. Like what?
Oh, you poor woman.
I thought the McDonald's, this used to be a 24-hour McDonald's.
I don't know. We had this discussion the other day, and maybe Simpiwe knows something about this, but I think a lot of the places that used to be 24/7 are now not anymore.
This is what I realized this morning. I was like, oh, so it must be because of COVID, then they just rationalized. And they now.
I think also maybe people just aren't around about like at 3 a.m. as much as they used to be. I don't know. I mean, there must be some commercial sensibility to it, right? I mean, if they could make money, they would be making money. So maybe they've looked at it and gone, there's no money in this anymore. Who knows? Who knows? So, lots to get into today. I just want to play something to start the show this morning. Someone sent us a voice note, and I think this is amazing. Somebody was listening to the show some time ago, and they found a clip. I think it might have been from a burning platform, but it was all the way back in 2017, which feels like, a different age.
Yo.
Uh-huh. And listen to this. Someone made a prediction, and it's all come true. I wish I could remember who this guest was because I'd love to give them credit, but listen to this.
Hi, Ron. I'm listening to this podcast, the GCS podcast from back in 2017. And who thought this would be true? Listen here.
An unstable crisis.
Do you think some people will go to jail?
I really hope so. Like, I think
we all do.
This is the big myth, right? Is that as soon as Zuma leaves the presidency, the ANC can move on. No ways. No. He is going to haunt the ANC and the country for as long as it takes. Because look, let's say Zuma leaves tomorrow, right? Mm-hmm. His corruption case is coming up in September. Mm-hmm. His successor is going to have to decide whether to reinstitute the prosecution. If they do that and he's found guilty, well, then the last decade has just been a big farce because we've actually had a corrupt president who used the money.
You hear that? Really? You're so true. From back in 2017, can you believe it? They saw it coming.
So I think that's quite prescient. Whoever that guest is, we need to try and remember and get them back because maybe they've got more predictions. They're like a Nostradamus.
You must send us the dates.
Then we can look it up. So if you can recognize that voice, maybe we've got very smart people listening. Maybe they'll remember.
But that voice also does sound like that's a little sped up. It sounds like that's a little sped up. He's playing it like at 1.5. It sounds chipmunky.
Might do. Sanere says, sorry, I can't resist. I was on Clifton Beach. Oh, nice. Nice. That's great. Start off your day by making the rest of us, grumpy and miserable about our lives. Gavin says, Phumi was stone cold last week, so signs of things to come again. Oh, you mean the temperature of the studio affected her mood? Oh, there goes my light. Great. Okay, well, anyway, you'll have to look at me in the dark.
I do want to say a disclaimer. I wasn't feeling too great last week. I wasn't feeling quite like myself, but we soldiered.
You know what? This is the kind of show where you can admit that, Pums, and there's no shame in admitting that you weren't feeling great, or if someone irritated you, which is equally possible.
I am hard to irritate.
No, that's true. But I did get quite a lot of feedback from people, including some people who said they find Rob a bit of a what was the terminology? Like a stunt man, someone who does stuff for attention. Which, hey, listen, I mean, I've been called that, so it's perfectly possible that you interpret people like
Listen, we did go. We did, and Rob and I got into, and he absolutely said, "No, it's not possible." When I said our foreign direct investment percentage-wise is better than the UK, and we're actually in a better position. Here we are, 1 week later, and the UK is a shit show.
Oh, it is. Have you seen what's happened to the pound? We were talking about this yesterday at the start of the show. It's unbelievable.
Listen, they got a warning from the IMF. I was
Mhm.
reading last night when I went to bed. They got a warning from the IMF that they need to relook their budget. Yeah, that's third world country shit, right? That's like the
It is.
IMF telling you to like fat.
You know, the guest might be Sizwe Mpofu after he released his single about Zuma, says Justice. It might be.
Might
I
be.
mean, we can look it up. We have had Sizwe on. We've had everybody on. You know, Dori was telling me she's going to get Ferial Haffajee on again, who, of course, has got a new book out about Zondo. And, you know, we'd love to have her on. And there are a lot of other guests that we haven't spoken to in ages that we need back. In fact, today on the Burning Platform, Phumlani Majozi's back after, I think the last time he was on was in May. But, you know, there's some regulars, and then they're the ones. I saw Canthan on Tuesday. He was around our offices. He's got a lot going on at the moment when he's not on the Burning Platform, which is rare now, but he's busy.
And I have had the good fortune of Mweletsi Mbeki agreeing to come on. I just have to give all the details. He's agreed in another conversation or at another time for something else. And he was like, yeah, he'll come on the show.
Okay,
So
great.
I just have to get.
You know, I love Mweletsi Mbeki because he was saying stuff about the ANC before it was cool. What I mean is, you know what I mean, Phumi. I mean, he's one of the brave people, and he's ANC royalty, you know. And I mean, if you can use that terminology, you know, there's some families in that political party who you can see, like, the grandchildren get given positions and prominence, and they get talked about, and they get pushed to the front of the queue because that's how the ANC works. It's basically an elitist organization, and that family, the Mbeki family, they've earned their place. I mean, they had, you know, a president in Thabo. They had a one of the great stalwarts in Govan. And Mweletsi, when he was growing up, was also, you know, and intellectually, he's really quite unassailable in terms of the positions he's taken. And he's been right almost every step of the way, much to the chagrin of other people in the ANC. So he was brave about that long before everybody else was. I have to say at this point, you know, while I'm sitting here in the dark, looking and it's great lighting. If power went out of police, Gareth, your white privilege is giving you great lighting. You know, the ANC at the moment they've really plunged themselves. I saw that they've decided Zweli Mkhize is their preferred candidate for, I think it's deputy chairperson or secretary general or something like that, the ANC in KZN. That they are going to forgive him all of the indiscretions of, what did they call it? The digital vibes saga. Because according to the ANC in KZN, whenever you go anywhere in KZN, you will find clinics and hospitals, which Zweli Mkhize built for our people, they say. So, you know, the ANC, again, proving that they're willing to turn a blind eye to just about any kind of nefarious activity, as long as some cadres consider it worthwhile to get someone into a position. There's absolutely no merit in that organization. They're just a disgrace. They really are a disgrace. It's unbelievable. Tracy reminds us here that there's someone else we need to get back. Jack Evnerain. Yes, absolutely. He reminded us all yesterday on Twitter, obviously, that the 80s series TV Shaka Zulu made over 5 billion rand, and Henry Cele didn't get a cent from it. The SABC was crooked even back then. Tabo Pali says, I respect Moeletsi as well. His brother, on the other hand, I have a feeling he is one of the reasons you might be sitting in the dark, Gareth. Well, yes, but he was certainly not the worst reason. I mean, he was not the source of our problem. I think that there's just a, you know how the ANC takes collective responsibility for everything when there's something wrong, but you'll find people like like the Gautrain was, Mbazima Shilowa. It was the Shilowa Express because it was something good. ANC didn't take collective responsibility for the African Union. Thabo took responsibility for, along with Obasanjo, making the AU. So when something good can be claimed, there's always someone to claim it. When something bad happens, then it's collective responsibility.
No, but I do think the one thing that Thabo has come back to say, and he's said it out loud, that he was told that there would be these kind of issues, and at the time he didn't believe that it needed urgent attention. And he's, so I think this is also a great thing to be, right? A person that can say, when I look back, maybe that decision wasn't a great decision, but
Absolutely.
We're here now. And for me, it's about we're here now and how do we go forward? Because we're not going to change what happened back then.
Well,
we can't go back and change that.
No, we can't. But my God, can we do something to fix it, please? Because this is the announcement from Eskom yesterday on ENCA. Look at this. Breaking news. This was last night. Eskom implements stage 4 power cuts indefinitely. So basically what they're saying is just get used to this. It's not going away. Stage 4 forever. That's what they're saying. And look at this headline from a couple of years ago. It says here on the 11 December 2014. Okay, this is 8 years ago. This is when we started Cliff Central. Ramaphosa to oversee Eskom and SAA turnaround. Well, I mean, maybe he's just getting into it still. 8 years. Maybe he's still getting his toes wet, because fuck me, is that a bad record? I mean, that's a headline from News 24, Ramaphosa to oversee Eskom and SAA turnaround, 11 December 2014. How's that going for you, Cyril?
Wow, imagine that. Eskom and SAA. I thought the news headline that you were going to put up, I did not see the stage 4 indefinitely headline, but I did see last night the headline that Pravin was unable to give what? Financials for Eskom. They're not going to be ready, he says. They're not going to be ready in time. Therefore, they won't be presenting them to the Parliamentary Oversight Committee. Does that sound like another entity not so long ago? SAA, right?
SAA.
Same thing. He came out.
Which was also under which minister?
Wow.
Who could it be? Who could it be? Bum, 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 bum. It could be only Pravin. I'll tell you what, this guy.
What is that song?
Man is poisonous. I don't know what that song is. Believe it or not, Pravin is the boss. If he doesn't get it right, he will just say the financials delayed. Who could it be? There we go. Believe it or not, it's Pravin. There we go. I made a song for him.
Modus operandi. Modus.
You want to see some? Look at this headline. Here's a headline to get your head spinning this morning. First thing, and I mean, we've got some stupid stuff to talk about this morning too. But just in case you think Phumi and I are shirking our responsibilities, we have trolled all the different websites, and here we found News 24. This is new. Many South Africans wouldn't mind a dictatorship if basic rights are guaranteed, research shows. I mean, let's just park that for a second, because that is probably one of the most damning things I've seen. We often say, and we said it last week, we often say this, Phumi. I said it to Rob Hersov last week. Don't we get the government we deserve? Well, if this research that News 24 is quoting here is to be believed, then South Africans are dumb enough to deserve a dictatorship. I mean, they clearly don't know what the word means. I don't think a lot of people even know what the word democracy means, despite the fact that we were, in 1994, it was made abundantly clear to us that what was to be achieved was a democracy for the first time. Anyway, what I'm going to do is park that for a second, because look under that. Record load shedding set to ease, says Gordon. So again, I'm just going to show you the Cyril headline from 8 years ago, right? Ramaphosa to oversee Eskom SAA turnaround. That was 2014. That didn't happen because here's today's headline. Eskom implements stage 4 power cuts indefinitely. So clearly Cyril failed by the headlines only, right? Not my opinion or Pumi's opinion. Failure. Boom, stamp it, failure. And then look at Pravin here. This is just a couple of hours ago. Record load shedding set to ease, says Pravin Gordhan. And again, I'll bring this one up. Eskom implements stage 4 power cuts indefinitely. Both of those people, Cyril and Pravin, proven by their own words. Remember, these are their own responsibilities. They are shown to come up wanting. Pathetic. Pathetic. Get over yourselves, guys. Just quit. Just quit. You're a disaster. And then we take a deep breath, Phumi, and we listen to some wise words. Are you ready? Let's do a Zen thing here. Let's clear our minds. Let's calm ourselves.
Okay,
Awusa,
my ears. My ears.
Yeah, here we go. Awusa,
Don't
right?
beat yourself up over past mistakes. You are going to fuck up again in the future, quite possibly in the most spectacular fashion. Why worry about yesterday's fuck-ups when you have tomorrow's fuck-ups to look forward to?
Why worry about tomorrow's fuck-ups? I mean, yesterday's fuck-ups when you have tomorrow's to look forward to. Now, I think that the ANC play that before their conferences. There we go. Some wise words from our guru. We have a resident guru on the show. Did you know that?
This is me
Yes.
rubbing my ears. Woosa.
Best feeling. All right. Let's see. Here we've got Carl and Yonda, who are busy having an argument about something. Carl says, on a serious note, is there any member of the ANC that is non-puss? So Yonda then climbs in and says, Ramaphosa, your people and fishes, is failure and SAA is gone, and soon Eskom is going there in the next 5 years. Remember, they're only there because Cape Town pays their bills, and soon when Cape Town has its own power, they're gone. Well, again, if Cape Town is the place that is to be held up as the only success story out of the cities and the Western Cape out of the provinces, you got to admit there's no one who's competing with them at the moment. We can't seem to get a government together in Tshwane. They've just managed to cobble one together, a very rickety one in Nelson Mandela Bay. Mpopalatsi, who I know you want to talk about a bit later on as well, in Joburg is trying desperately to cobble something together, but that's also not really working. So I think what we've learned is that maybe these coalitions aren't as good as just voting for an opposition party and getting them in, if you look at Cape Town. But we'll talk about that, right, Pums? You've got some ideas. All right. Rebellious Ruth says, I was at an event and apparently the chap I was speaking to said Eskom and SAA are severely interlinked on the books and there is no one without the other. Well, funny enough, someone said to me yesterday, have you noticed that the petrol price has gone down but diesel didn't? Do you know why? Because they're using diesel to make all the power. Well, the little bit of power we have.
Wait, petrol went down?
You didn't feel it though, did you? But you felt it a whole lot less if diesel was what you're filling your car with, which I am. And I'll tell you something. This diesel price is only going to go up as long as it's all that they have to burn in our power stations. So there are a lot of comments here. Justice Lesilo says, Phumi, Thabo Mbeki quoted Pali Lehoatla's article about what needs to happen to Eskom. Did you have a look at it? Do you know what that is?
No, I did not see that. No, I did not see that. But I've had a very interesting conversation with Pali about a year ago with Pali Lehoatla. Fascinating. And look, and the man writes, this is the thing about Stats SA, is it's a tool. It's a tool to plan. That's why they collect all this data, is it's supposed to allow us an opportunity to plan. And we know this. This is planning and implementation, two pitfalls that our government has.
Yes.
Big pitfalls.
Mandy Maestri says, I read an article last night about the banks facing an avalanche of demands from customers trying to ditch Eskom. The article was from MoneyWeb. Well, I know it doesn't look like it right now while I'm sitting in the dark, but I've bitten the bullet and I've decided I'm going to beg, borrow, and steal, but I'm going to have to put in an alternative energy source here at home. And I think anybody who can is going to, but that leaves millions and millions of South Africans at the mercy of Eskom. And you know what? As people like me and so many who are cleverer than me who've already done this, so many of our listeners already, as they leave the Eskom system, so does their money. So this just makes it worse for Eskom. So that their failure will lead to a much more precipitous failure in the short term. And you know what? This is bound to happen because people who can will make an arrangement to not have to be dependent on them. And there are lots of people who've done this and who did this years ago already. Very insightful, foresightful people who've been doing this for some time. I'm just hopping on the bandwagon a bit late. But you know what? We've got to do it, right?
If you can.
Got to do it. So Tabo also says, as Sis Phumi said, we need to focus on the now and how we fix this issue. We can't change the past, absolutely. But we can look back on the past and use it to inform the future and realize which people we trusted that we shouldn't trust anymore. I think that's an important lesson that we need to learn. Ricky says, before I emigrated a month ago, I went to Cape Town for a weekend. It's like a different country. It really is a different country. And then Stink Mina brings up this, which I think was funny. Gwede got booed and wanted to cry at the Kasatu rally. It made my week. Yeah, did you see Gwede getting booed, Phumi?
He wanted to cry. I don't think he wanted to cry. He wanted to cry. Never.
He said, I saw the clip on the news. He said, and I'll translate that for you. What it basically meant, because he looks like one of those, those mutts that you find, especially at the SPCA, that have a terrible underbite like this. And they go, he even sounds like that. So Gwede, I'll try and translate. He said something like, this alliance is breaking. These are his words. This alliance is breaking down. It's very sad. We can't hold it together anymore. And that was all because he was being booed. So, he's basically now turning his back on Kasatu because he realizes Kasatu is booing him. So it's all falling apart. Poor Gwede. Shame. What's he going to do then?
I read an incredibly awesome article on the smithsonianmag.com about in smithsonianmag.com. I read an article earlier this week about the Roman Empire and what precipitated the kind of, and it's because this guy wrote a book and it's all about what happened even before the crumbling. So what led to the crumbling of the Roman Empire? He's an American and it's on the Smithsonian. So he's obviously also making comparisons with what's happening in America right now.
Right.
But when I was reading this article, I promise you guys, I could have taken a highlighter and highlighted parts and just substituted Roman Empire or the Senate or with names from South Africa, with political parties, and it would make absolute sense. It would be the exact same thing.
Please send me that. Please send me that article. It sounds.
I actually don't know why I didn't, because I did. You were one of the people that I was gonna send it to. It's really, really cool. It's really cool, and this book made me want to get the book, which is also what a great article does about it. That's a bit of a book review.
Sounds amazing. Tracy says, isn't she lucky? She's off to the Kgalagadi on Saturday. Looking forward to photographing wildlife and birds and not births for a few days. I love what I do, but a break is needed. Oh, yes.
I hope you get clear skies and you can photograph some of those stars too, Tracy.
Mandy says, this is interesting. I hear you, and I did bite that bullet a while ago. That's the solar bullet. The problem is they will find a way to fuck you over even more, says Mandy. With the increase in load shedding, the batteries don't get a chance to charge. So you're back to square one. I'm seriously looking into a solar solution right now. Oh, okay. She just had batteries, but not solar. But City Power wants to charge you a service fee for having a solar solution. They want to charge you for the sun and for infrastructure that they're not responsible for. Don't let them. If they come to your door or they come to your gate and they say, you're putting in solar, huh? You owe us some money. Take out a gun and say to them, if you don't get off my property now, I will shoot you dead, and see how quickly they go away. That's what I reckon we got it. Might makes right in Africa. We must just do what we have to do. I'm telling you.
Might makes right.
Might makes right. That's how it works here. Chase says the UK is currently studying how South Africa implements load shedding. They will be going the same route due to gas supply issues from Russia. Oh, yes, that is true. But don't let the ANC tell you, oh, no, everyone on Earth is having load shedding problems.
Hey, it's a very...
Yeah, I know. That's what he said the other day. Mm-hmm.
You know, just like stringing together all of the various sound bites of what happens during the course of the 7 days between when we see each other, Gareth. I cannot believe that we're not like, we don't have whiplash. There's like, so much going on.
Speaking of this, did you see our favorite New Zealander, Jacinda the Horse Ardern, at the at the UN? She had the temerity to pitch up at the UN. She had some things to say. Do you want to hear what she said? Are you really interested? Because I know you have a suspicion about what it could be. Are you ready? Do you want to hear what she said?
Of course.
Okay, here she is. Here's Jacinda Ardern, everybody. Oh, no. Sorry. I need to give you the translation. Actually, no, here she is.
This week, we launched an initiative alongside companies and nonprofits to help improve research and understanding of how a person's online experiences are curated by automated processes. This will also be important in understanding more about mis- and disinformation online, a challenge that we must, as leaders, address. Sadly, I think it's easy to dismiss this problem as one in the margins. I can certainly understand the desire to leave it to someone else. As leaders, we're rightly concerned that even the most light-touch approaches to disinformation could be misinterpreted as being hostile to the values of free speech that we value so highly. But while I cannot tell you today what the answer is to this challenge, I can say with complete certainty that we cannot ignore it. To do so poses an equal threat to the norms we all value. After all, how do you successfully end a war if people are led to believe the reason for its existence is not only legal but noble? How do you tackle climate change if people do not believe it exists? How do you ensure the human rights of others are upheld when they are subjected to hateful and dangerous rhetoric and ideology? The weapons may be different, but the goals of those who perpetuate them is often the same: to cause chaos and reduce the ability of others to defend themselves, to disband communities, to collapse the collective strength of countries who work together. But we have an opportunity here to ensure that these particular weapons of war do not become...
I can't take much more of her. She is absolutely...
So, but you know...
Here's a person who shut down her whole country and locked everything up, and she's talking about collapsing communities.
But you know what Jacinda gets right? You know what Jacinda gets right, and this is what gets her elected, is she shows up, unlike our president who flew back home to have a Zoom meeting, right? So, and this is not the first time. This is not the first time that he like ducked. She shows up, and she speaks so convincingly. And she's got interest and variation in her voice. Because these are the things, right? These are the, look at the new Italian prime minister.
You mean that fake caring? Like, we
have
got to help communities. And then she gets that sad, faraway look in her eyes of like, I'm here to help you because I know better.
And
That's
look where she is. And
well,
look where
Hitler
she is.
Hitler was good at that too. And I hate to do the comparing to Hitler thing, but yeah. I mean, this is a woman. Phumi, I don't believe, first of all, these people are the biggest hypocrites. People like her and Trudeau and Boris and God knows. I mean, pick a leader in the world today. They're all fake as can be. And I've had enough of being lectured by people who have the worst track record imaginable. Jacinda Ardern, every single thing that has happened in New Zealand that is as a result of her decisions has had to be turned around. She even had to admit the other day, all right, COVID, we overdid it. We're opening everything up. There was nothing we could do in the first place. Sorry about all those businesses we've ruined. Sorry about all that. I saw a thing yesterday on the news about how organ donation all over the world has dropped precipitously since COVID, which is unsurprising. When you put people into an absolute panic about their physical well-being, you tell them that there's this boogeyman and that you have to follow government's rules and blah, 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 blah. What do you think is going to happen? Of course, they're going to say, oh, well, those kidneys, I'm not putting myself on the organ donor list because they'll come and harvest me. You've seen what government will do if you give them power. They'll lock down an economy. They'll shut you up in your house. They won't let you travel. So they might as well take your organs and harvest you. That's what people are thinking. That's what happens. Another unforeseen consequence of the kind of social engineering we were all party to over 2 years, thanks to morons like Jacinda Ardern. Fucking cheek.
All I'm saying is it's working for her. It's working for her.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, I don't think that in the long run, people like this are going to have that much support. I think people will see through it eventually. You know, like a bad actor in a movie. You eventually go, it's not believable.
In the long run, we're all dead.
But also, you're comparing her to Cyril, which is like, you know, apples and oranges. Because
Gareth, you just compared her to Hitler.
I know, apples and oranges as well. But I mean, who do we compare her to? That's not a complete disaster. Well, who do we compare it to that's not a genocidal maniac? I mean, who should we be comparing her to? And this woman, it's also fake. I can't stand her, and I'm unashamed to admit it. Just one other quick thing. You know how I was very rude the other day about all those people who lined up to go and see the Queen lying in state. Well, someone sent me a clip.
You were rude about that. Okay, I missed that.
You remember I said all these people that they interview on TV that are waiting in the queue, and I said they're such terrible people. Well, I found this clip someone sent to me.
Even worse.
And this is unbelievable. All right, take a look at this guy. He's like a giant. So first of all, he's about 8 foot tall. He's got a big hairy. He's got like a half a beard going, and he's got his teeth in all the wrong places, and this is and listen to how he sounds. He's a monster as well. I mean, he sounds like a monster. You ready? Not this first guy with the top hat on.
Have you found out how long the queue is?
No, not yet.
No, so it's 9 hours until the front.
Is it?
That you'll have to wait, yeah.
We're prepared to put
How's that guy, huh?
No, not yet. Oh, is it?
Did you see what he looked like?
Gareth, stop it.
No, wait. We're gonna watch it again. Listen to the voice.
Have you found out how long the queue is?
No, not yet.
No, so it's 9 hours until the front.
Is it?
That you'll have to wait, yeah.
We're prepared to put the graft in, mate.
So I had to show you I was right. Terrible people in that queue. All right, take a big deep breath. Are you ready for some headlines, Phumi?
Jeez, we still have headlines to do. Hey,
I know.
What a busy morning.
It's a very busy morning. I've got lots of stuff for you. So first of all, Lizzo, who is the big fat singer that everybody is saying is so terrific. She played a 200-year-old flute that was owned by a former U.S. president. This is apparently a big story. U.S. star Lizzo wowed fans during a concert on Tuesday in Washington when she took to the stage to play a 200-year-old crystal flute once owned by former U.S. President James Madison. The singer trained flautist was granted permission by the Library of Congress to play the instrument, which arrived on stage with police escort. Inspecting it on stage, she said it is like playing out of a wine glass. And if you look at this picture, and again, you know how I feel about enormously fat, obese people, but I think even I am within my rights to say at this point, it looks like Lizzo wants to eat this thing. I'll show you a picture to prove my point.
I will.
She, please, Phumi. And you know, if I were that flute, if the flute had feelings, I'd be terrified to be put near a mouth that has clearly eaten all the cakes. Look at this. She looks like she's about to eat it. There's no two ways about it.
Okay, yes, she does.
She does, right? This is why you got to watch the show on YouTube, by the way, and like and subscribe. There we go.
She does look like she wants
She really
to
does
eat
look
it.
like she wants to eat it. All right, here's your favorite president, Cyril Ramaphosa, in the next headline. This is from IOL. He tells municipalities they are key in attracting investors for their cities. You want to handle this? They had a local government summit, okay? And he's reminded the country's local government sphere of how important it is in attracting the much talked about investors in their various localities. I mean, what chance does Mogale City
Have you noticed how much Cyril talks about money? Almost everywhere where you see Cyril. He talks about money. He talks about
why do you think that
and
is?
Because he needs 64 million randelas in his couches. But no, because, you know, it bothers me. It bothers me on so many levels because there are so many other things that need leadership in this country, that need inspiration, that need thought, that really need to be thought about and kind of that need attention. And all Cyril pays attention to is money. All Cyril pays attention to is money.
I think that's a very, very interesting observation. Very good. Good point. Just a quick thing here from Tracy. She says, from Corona's Boring. If Lizzo didn't lead all the rats or children out of town, I'm unimpressed after playing that flute, which is, I think, an interesting point, you know. Rusty says, what investors? Who's going to invest with criminals running our country? Look at Starlink. Yeah, that's a good point. Well put. What do we have to do to fast forward to the national elections? Well, I don't know that we want to even do that at this point. The Italian Prime Minister is my favorite, says Onhopotse. Yeah, she's getting a lot of attention. And I saw yesterday that apparently Google has removed her video. The famous
Really?
video that went viral. Yeah, they've removed it because obviously, you know, Google's so impartial. I'm just sorry, my light keeps kind of going on and off. I don't know what the hell's happening here. Let me just see if I can get it working. It's not doing its job. Goddamn light. Come on, man. I sound like Joe Biden. Come on, man. You know how he says that all the time? You heard Joe?
No, actually, you sound a little bit like which they don't make too many of anymore, a Western. You sound like an old Western.
They don't do that. You're right. Derek also says, I smock that Italian Prime Minister. Yeah, she's definitely getting... Well, only because she is saying things that people have longed to hear for the longest time about family, about being a mom, about nations, about God, stuff that actually a lot of people who are conservative and have traditional values, and you've got to remember, we live in quite a conservative country, where they're sick of hearing this global claptrap. They're sick of hearing from people like Jacinda Ardern. Instead, they'd like to hear from a woman like this. And I've noticed, by the way, and this may be something you've noticed too, although she's the first Italian prime minister who's a woman, there was no fuss made of that in the media. No one said anything about how great it is that she's broken a glass ceiling. No one. Why? Because she's not a left-wing lunatic. If you're a left-winger, they praise the hell out of you. You could be the first person with mousy-colored hair in some job if you're a left-winger, and you'll get all the credit in the universe. But if you're a person who doesn't have left-wing opinions, forget about it. They're not coming to congratulate you. No one in the media is coming to say, well done, Julia. Just a quick footnote to throw in there.
Well
All right.
done, Julia.
Yeah. Germany and France are in talks with South Africa over a 10 billion rand loan to move away from coal. Oh, sweet Jesus. We have coal. Why
Hmm.
away from coal? And do you really think that if you give our treasury 600 million euros, they're going to put it into sorting out alternative fuel? Oh, no, they're not. They're going to steal and pocket that money straight away. This is a terrible idea.
Especially since, they're firing up their coal-fired power stations again.
Correct. Hypocrisy.
But who are they talking to about that loan? Who is taking that loan? It's
Who's
your man
taking those
Cyril.
calls? Who's listening
It's
to this nonsense?
it's your man Cyril.
He's not my man, Cyril, and I know he's not yours either. So, okay. But let's look into it, right? Why is it that all these countries all over the world are not practicing what they preach? Because they're, of course, as you point out, firing up their own coal-powered stations. But they're so desperate to get everyone else, including us, off the coal. Why is that? You have to ask why. It's not because they care about the environment. They've done this already in Sri Lanka, and we know what happens. Look at what happened in Sri Lanka. That was because they forced that country to comply with all kinds of green agenda goals and targets. And what happened? It sunk the country into an economic death spiral and got the government kicked out. Now, I like the second part, but trust me, you don't want a revolution. What you want,
No.
what you want is some
No.
kind of peaceful transition. And that's not going to happen if we follow this stuff. All right. They also want our coal, which is a good point being made by Andy here. I think they do. I think they want it and they want it cheap. So part of the deal would probably be you give us your coal so you don't use it and we get to buy it off you cheap. SA's Lift airline has expanded its services. Well, obviously, because there's no other airline. By the way, yesterday we talked about this. So who've we got at the moment, Phumi? We've got Airlink. We've got Lyft. We've got
Fly Sapphire.
Fly Sapphire. And then we've also got Sem Air, which I think they only do a
Oh,
few
I
routes,
don't
but
know what's them air.
Sem Air is a thing. So apparently, while other airlines have seen their demise, South Africa's Lyft airline has expanded its services and will now offer flights between Joburg and Durban. They didn't do that before, they just did Cape Town. Bookings for the Joburg-Durban route went live last week, and the first flights are expected to start operating late next month with 3 return flights a day. That's terrific. Meanwhile, customers can expect booking dates for Cape Town-Durban to be confirmed in the coming weeks, with flights expected to start operating later this year. Very good news. Lyft's co-founder, Jonathan Ayash, explains that the Johannesburg-Cape Town offering is also expanding. So around 16 flights a day just from them. That's 8
Wow.
returns. There is some short-term pressure, but that is primarily driven by the cost of fuel. Jet fuel has tripled since we launched in December 2020. If you fly last minute, then it is expensive, but the trick is to book as far in advance as possible because you get a very affordable flight if you book in advance. So good, great news. More flights, cheaper flights, because the more options we have, the better. We know how capitalism works. Competitive, free market, the customer wins. Customer gets to choose. So good stuff all sorted there. Whew. Those are the headlines for this morning. Let me quickly tell you about what we have been doing every
We're
second
not talking about the new speaker in Joburg. You see, because I'm a Joburger, I'm so invested in the Joburg.
Sorry.
I'm so
not
invested in the sagas of the Joburg. Of the
All right, well,
Joburg City Council.
let me refer to this. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so COPE have managed to proffer Colleen Makubele, who was on Wednesday afternoon elected as the new Speaker of the Johannesburg City Council. The Congress of the People, which, I mean, I thought they weren't really a thing, but clearly they are. They've got.
You're concentrating, Gareth.
Who've they got?
You're
Colleen.
concentrating.
They got Colleen. They've got Mosiwa, and they've got Madisha, right? Willie Madisha.
Although, if you were paying attention to the news cycle last week, Monday, they may or may not have Colleen, right? So there was quite a thing about this last week, Monday. is she suspended or is she not? So there was a notice that she has been suspended because she was one of the people uh, that voted to oust the last speaker. And then
That's
there
got
was
good
she was one of the people that voted to oust him, and now she has his job. And then there was a notice that she's been suspended. And because of all of the things that are happening at COPE right now, guess what? Is she suspended? Is she not suspended? Then the Joburg region is saying, no, she's not suspended. She's still our girl. And now she is the speaker. Yeah.
You see, this is why I just thought we could breeze past that one. But okay, now we know what a complete disaster it is, and that's great news for the people who live in Joburg, because of course we're interested in party politics. If you own property in Joburg, you live in Joburg, what you really care about is service delivery. But do you think that's their priority? Hell no. It's all about jockeying for power, proven yet again by the election or non-election of a speaker or non-speaker who may or may not be suspended because of dumb party politics, and all they care about is themselves. God damn it.
Pay attention. People.
Every second Monday, we do markets.com and Markets Mondays. So it's not just what you know, it's who you know that matters. We know this, right, Phumi? Wake up to a partner that you can trust with markets.com. They present Market Mondays twice a month on this show, a podcast that is dedicated to the discerning trader. They're providing insight into financial markets, the world of trading, and the usage of next-gen trading platform technology. If you haven't heard markets.com on the show, first of all, they have given our listeners a special bonus. So if you join up, you get some free money to spend, but you can also go and do anything there. You could trade in futures, derivatives. That's if you're really advanced. You can buy things like gold. You can buy shares on various exchanges all over the world. You could buy some crypto. They've pretty much got a one-stop shop for anything that you want to trade in. And I think it's a really cool place to learn. If you go in, you don't have to put a huge amount of money in. Who has a huge amount of money lying around, frankly? But go in, start up, learn if you can. They've got great resources. We've spoken to some of their partners as well, who've told us about the things that they put into the system that allows you to make wise, sensible decisions about your money. And why not try? It's better than leaving it lying around or trusting people who you've trusted so far with it. We know how well that's worked out for some people. So go along and check it out on markets.com. We're taking you in a direction that we think that you should go in, and we're talking about everything to do with trading. You can hear it here first with markets.com. They'll be back again on the show next week. Okay, Mash Mashinini says, disagreeing with Sanele, do we need an international airline? Which is what Sanele said. It doesn't really serve us very well. SAA flights domestically were never really competitive with pricing. So what was the point besides funneling money into politicians? Well, that's all it was. You know, SAA used to keep 2 seats in first class on every flight just in case one of the ministers decided they wanted to go somewhere. You know that.
You know, somebody earlier in the show spoke about, in the comment section, spoke about how interlinked SAA and ESCOM and Transnet even. Here's the thing, and I think we don't spend enough time kind of looking at how things work and how things are supposed to work. And I think that's one of the things that the ANC got very wrong, is they just didn't know. They didn't know. So a whole lot of decisions were made to break things apart, whereas actually and this is what state-owned enterprises do, right? Is they cross-subsidize each other. In a business, Gareth, you know this, right? So some areas of your business will make a profit, some areas of your business will make a loss, but overall, right, it becomes. And the thing about businesses like SAA and why the local flights were important is part of that is also around, remember there was the Enyobeni Tavern and all of those samples, medical samples that needed to get to Cape Town. But because we don't have a national carrier and because the cost of sending samples from one part of the country to another part of the country or back to central forensics in Pretoria is so high, it took like 2 weeks because now they had to send it via courier on the road. Da, 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 da. And those are all of the things that are interlinked in the way that these things work. So
I
Transnet,
it
Transnet, Metro
needs a
Rail, PRASA, all of those things are interlinked.
isn't
And
it the job of the Minister of Public Enterprises to make those links work so that departments that are making a profit and departments that are making a loss can cross-subsidize each other? And also, Phumi, what department is making a profit at the moment? What have these ministers and these boards on the because I see they're changing Eskom's board now. What have these people done that's worked? Point to just one. One. Oh, hang on. I'll wait,
that's
but we'll be
where
here
I
all week.
started. They didn't get it right. But this is the point to MASH, to
True.
understanding why these different components are all necessary. All the different components are necessary and why before they all used to live together so that they are under one oversight, So
Mm. Well, I'm not going to hold my breath, and you shouldn't hold yours either. It's time for change. We've got to get these guys out. I'm afraid it's done now. Just one quick thing on the woke news. You know how I love a bit of woke news every week. Usually I save the woke news for Wednesdays, but I thought this is a good one. So Brad Pitt has announced the launch of his gender-neutral skincare line, which is called Le Domaine. It's named Le Domaine. The wine-inspired gender-neutral line is biodegradable and contains 2 patented ingredients. But most importantly, it's genderless. So Brad Pitt's decided he needs to get into the skincare business.
what does that mean, wine inspired?
It's bullshit. It's marketing, isn't it? It's just marketing. Do you
Although
buy this?
Brad Pitt does have great skin.
Well, if Tom Cruise launched a line, maybe I'd take it seriously. He has, he's ageless. I don't know what that guy's doing. Have you seen that Top Gun movie? He doesn't look like he's aged a day. And then,
listen, when Kaneho said to me, when Kaneho said Top Gun, and he was, I was just like, this is unbelievable. All these many years later, for them to have been able to create this franchise that appeals to him today in the same way that it appealed to me all those many years ago when listen, with the same star.
Right.
If somebody came to me and said he had actually sold his soul to the devil to get this level of kind of
I would believe
cross-generation appeal, I would be like,
yeah,
he needs to run a masterclass on how to find the said devil and sign over. Sign over your soul. Where's the blood-soaked pen?
Right. I agree with you. Like they used to do in the mafia. They'd take a drop of blood and drop it on a picture of a saint and then burn the picture. That's how you join La Cosa Nostra. Oh, yeah. All right. So how's this? You found this, Phumi. This is fantastic. It's from the Visual Capitalist, which is one of the sites that you've told us about over and over again. It's an interesting look at population dynamics. And this is how the world will look when we get to 8 billion people. This is kind of
sometime in November.
Right, correct. So it's just around the corner. So the red is Asia. The light blue is Europe. The dark blue is North America. The green is South America. The yellow orange is Africa. And then that little purple piece is Australia. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't really see it in detail here, but it's amazing how China and India are enormous.
Look at that, China and India.
Well,
1.5 billion people, hey?
Yeah, well, China 1.45 billion people, India 1.41 billion people, Bangladesh coming in, and Pakistan bringing up the rest of Asia. Also, Indonesia is worth noting at 280 million. Then if you look at North America, the US has 335 million people, but that's in decline. In Europe, which they've included Russia in, I saw, despite Russia being pretty much in Asia, but they've always wanted to be in that sphere of influence, and they certainly are influencing that sphere at the moment. Russia is the biggest country population-wise in modern Europe at 116 million. Then we've got in South America, Brazil at the running at the front with 216 million. Africa is looking interesting because Nigeria has 218 million people, so it's the biggest country by population. But all of sub-Saharan Africa together is 307 million, which is interesting because they've included South Africa separately. We have obviously 64 million by their estimations. But if you take South Africa and Mozambique and the rest of sub-Saharan Africa, we are the biggest in Africa, which is interesting. And then, of course, they've got Australia, which is just like an afterthought. But that's more or less what the population of the world is going to look like. What do you think?
Isn't it? It is mind-blowing how. So one of the things that came up when I was reading this article is how the population 48 years ago, so about 50 years ago, was only 4 billion. And it's doubled. It's it's a lot of people. Breeding like rabbits here. Breeding like rabbits here, guys.
And that is, believe it or not, all we could squeeze into 1 hour. But my God, do you have a smorgasbord? Don't complain that there isn't enough to talk about this morning. When we come back, Phumlani Majozi and the burning platform. It'll be good to just catch up on all the news that we've missed out on. As Phumi said, you blink your eyes, 7 days go by, and everything has happened. So we will check in on everything. That's coming up next. Don't go away.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
So there's an article I read on sites by one of our journalists. I think it was done by Chad. And it speaks to essentially what's the cheapest car to own in South Africa. Or what's the cheapest car in terms of cost of ownership. And how he got to the conclusion is he used the Kinsey reports, which looks into basically the cost of service parts, repairing the car, and then as well as if you're in a crash or whatever. So it's basically taking those three different things, putting them together, and then we're getting a number, or a rank rather, of cheapest cars to own.
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
All right, it is time for us to get stuck into the burning platform. This is your chance to get up to date with all the stuff that's happening in the news. And Phumi and I will try to be useful interlocutors who try to bring you different points of view. We also invite people to the show who we think have different points of view. We've certainly had a few of those in the last few weeks, and we will continue to find all the people with all the different opinions from all the corners of South Africa. One of those people, and someone who is a fairly regular return champion here, is Phumlani Majozi, who we have with us this morning. Hey, Phumlani, how are you?
Good morning, sir. Good morning. I'm well, thank you. Hello, Phumi, as well. It's great to see you guys. It's great to be back.
It's good to see you, and I'm glad to see you have some light.
Phumlani, I'm so glad you dressed up for us.
I know.
Yeah, you guys are special. So I had to, pick up one of my best suits for this engagement.
I want to talk a little bit about you before we get into the burning platform, because you've been dealing with a lot more heat than usual in the last few weeks on Twitter, but maybe you have some things to say about that. I just want to quickly refer to Propaganda here, who says, I'm in a very dark place in my life at the moment, South Africa, which is, I think, true for a lot of us. Phumi actually brought up the happiness index and how we're all miserable and grumpy in South Africa at the moment. You actually brought that up last week, and that was a study by UJ, Pums.
Yes, it was. It was, and it found that South Africans are actually very grumpy right now, which happens when you can't boil water to make coffee, or you have to get dressed in the dark.
Of course. So, Phumlani, you have been receiving more than your usual amount, and you are one of those people who doesn't mind a little bit of to and fro on Twitter. But I noticed, and someone actually brought it to my attention, that you've been swatting a lot of flies on Twitter. Is it more than usual, or am I imagining it?
Well, it's more than usual. It keeps growing. So it is what it is. What can we do? We have to push. But the way you guys started about the matter of happiness and how people feel in South Africa, I must say that I have also, been engaging people as well, and people are frustrated by what is going on in the country. And the moment you talk about the impact, the blackouts, the power outages, the failures of Eskom have on people's lives, that's when you can see that frustration, because it changes their day. It changes how they work. If you are going to have stage 6, you are definitely going to have a population that is unhappy. So I think it's one of those times when we are seeing the failure of government policy or government's failure on its mandates when it comes to the current situation with Eskom, and we are seeing that frustration.
It's funny you say this is how South Africans adapt. You just mentioned, stage 6 is terrible. We can handle stage 4, but stage 6 is terrible. It's amazing how quickly we adapt, and we start to think, we're lucky because we only got stage 4 at the moment. And that's human nature, but it's also very South African. I mentioned this to Phumi earlier. We've discussed it over and over, but Eskom have now said we must just expect stage 4 indefinitely. They're not even going to draw a curtain on this. They see it as being a permanent situation, stage 4, from here on in.
Yeah, just one thing to add on that, Gareth, it's that when you listen to the president over the past, I would say, a week or two or so, in fact, it was this week, if I'm not mistaken, where he said he would like us to be patient with him and his administration when it comes to the issue, and that we must basically accept that we have to live with this load shedding for a while. So it tells you of that this is becoming normalized, and we are not sure. No one knows when exactly could this thing be resolved. And it gets worse, by the way, because this thing is exacerbated or worsened by what I call the green politics, right? The obsession over the green energy, the renewable energies, in which the developing countries are pressured, and also some of its leaders are accepting to be pressured by developed nations to adapt to this fast pace of, green sort of energy. And I'm not sure we are ready for that, Gareth.
Well, yeah, Phumi and I kind of hinted at some of this already in the first hour of this morning's show, but I didn't want to preempt anything. Let's talk about some of the things that are on Pumi's agenda this morning. It's not often that she gets to actually decide what we're going to talk about, because usually we have a guest, so we end up talking about what that guest talks about. But luckily for us, Phumlani is someone who reads the newspapers, pays attention to the news, knows what's going on, listens to the politicians, even though it dries him out. Like all of us, it hollows us out when we have to listen to these people. So let's just talk quickly about Mmusi Maimane, because I didn't pay any attention. I will admit, I feel like I've heard it all before coming from Mmusi, but I heard from one or two people who I regard as fairly sensible sources that he had some quite interesting things to say. What did he say?
Look, I think Phumlani, did you watch any of it? Did you have power to watch any of it?
A bit of it, and read more about it. So yeah.
Listen,
there's still a better position than I am to adjudicate this. So go on. Let's be fair. Let's be objective. What do we want to give Mmusi a chance here to explain his position and what he wants to do? What did you take from it, Pums?
Everybody should be given a chance to explain their position. But unfortunately, I mean, I felt that his position was a little bit lacking, actually, in substantive stuff, So we know that he doesn't believe that the ANC is where the end is. And he's kind of also talking they're calling it a franchise model, because he started, remember, Mmusi Maimane started one movement, and it was about giving independents an opportunity to run, and he had a training sessions around the country for independents to run for the municipal elections, and and now he's then saying we're going to go into the next general election, and Mmusi is the chairperson of his party, but it is also a party for independence. So everybody can, like a broad church, as the ANC says, that all the independents can come together and band together. He has been able to attract some people who the current newly elected deputy mayor in Nelson Mandela Bay is one of his people. Your favorite friend, Mutsuli, who was on the show. She is the national spokesperson, and but it's still a little bit thin. It's the thing that I always come on the show and talk about, to say I can hear all of these opposition people, and I understand that they are in opposition to the ANC, but they don't spend enough time telling us about their policies. They don't spend enough time telling us about what they do actually stand for, besides just being anti-ANC. And it was more of the same, unfortunately, with Mmusi. But, the proof will be in the pudding. What do you think, Phumlani, about what you saw?
Well, for me, it's broader than, at least I will start by saying that there is, I'm just wondering if in South Africa, we are seeing a lot of new parties. We have a lot of parties right now, there are a lot in the country, and we are still seeing more of this. And I'm not sure what impact Mmusi will have, given the nature of our politics at this point, and how many parties we've heard over the past years. So my view is that I wish he could have found somewhere to join and build something that's already been started, than to start something new, right? Because we've seen parties, COPE was founded years back as well. It struggled. We've seen.
But sorry, Phumlani, I don't mean to interrupt you, but he did come from another party, which he's very profoundly turned his back on. He has nothing nice to say about the DA. They also have nothing nice to say about him. That they parted very disagreeably. So he's tried that. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he thinks that the solution, and Phumi, we've had this discussion too. Yeah. The solution doesn't lie in the old parties. So why would you say that? Sorry, Phumi.
There are 621 parties, by the way, 621 registered parties in South Africa.
So now it's going to be 622 now on top of that. But my point is that there is I'm not sure. I just think we like to start our own parties. And my view is that I've asked us why couldn't you join him and Mashaba's party, Action SA, and work
I
on the
think when you
differences they might have. I'm sure the one is immigration, because Mashaba tends to take a tough stance on illegal immigration, and Musi Maimane seems to be softer and taking a bit of the EFF kind of thinking around immigration when it comes to how we should treat fellow Africans or in the country. So I mean, his vision is fine. I've never seen Musi Maimane as someone who would be bad for South Africa. I don't think I wouldn't rank him as the guys of the EFF. I wouldn't do that. I also wouldn't put him in that kind of thinking of the ANC as well. So his vision is not that bad in my view. The question is how it would play out. Is he going to have enough momentum to draw the support to build his own thing that he has already built? And if it doesn't work out in 2024, what is he going to do? So those
I
are
don't
the
think it's a
questions.
I don't think it's a bad thing starting your own party. You mentioned the EFF, they're a new party. You mentioned Herman Mashaba, he is a new party. I think with the vision, and which I don't believe Musi has a strong vision. That is really my thing about why he would find it hard to have traction, is he really does not have a strong vision, or he is unable to articulate his strong vision to galvanize people around him or around that vision, unlike what
I
Herman Mashaba and the EFF were able to do.
I wonder about something, and maybe you could both help me with this. There are a bunch of people in our parliament, people like Bantu Holomisa, you could say Mosiwa Lekota, you could say Willie Madisha, you could say Kenneth Meshwe. It seems to me that there are a few people who get away with doing just enough to get a nice big salary and to get the words MP after their name. And we inspect these people every year like they're going to bring some novel idea to the table. We inspect these people as if they're going to be the kingmaker, or they can make a change, or they can draw more votes out of the audience. They don't ever seem to be able to do that. The track record for these parties is that they decline over time. All of them have. And Bantu Holomisa, I mean, how many times, and I've interviewed Bantu Holomisa maybe 4 or 5 times, how many more times must we speak to him to hear that he is an empty vessel? How many more times must we speak to Mosiwa Lekota before we figure out that he's also just banging the same old drum? How many times must we speak to even Musi Maimane before we realize that there's not a whole lot going on there? They're just looking for, they've seen already, they've found an easy way to be a part of the national discourse, so they feel that their ego is being served. They also get a salary. They also sometimes, if they're lucky enough, get 1 or 2 of their friends in there as well, who also sit in parliament or who also sit on committees and get a salary. But it's just enough to run like a subsistence farming enterprise. It's like a subsistence politics, like a family office. It's just enough. Do you know what I mean? I'm just sick of these people who they're on the train, and then when it comes to criticizing the ANC, they have a lot to say. But as Phumi often says, they don't have a whole lot more than that. There's nothing else going on. We have to also stop paying attention to these sideshows, because they are sideshows. To equate Bantu Holomisa with the largest opposition party is a joke. To equate Mosiwa Lekota with the EFF is a joke. The EFF and the DA are substantial parties, even though the EFF is smaller by a degree, by an order of magnitude. They may be half the size, maybe even smaller than the DA. The fact is that they are a real party. They can get into double-digit figures. No way in hell is Bantu Holomisa or Mosiwa Lekota ever going to get into those numbers, or Musi Maimane for that matter. Perhaps even you could say Herman Mashaba. So why are we giving them so much airtime and creating this false equivalence like these are also voices of the opposition, but we prefer them because they're not the DA or the EFF?
My sort of view, Gareth, is that I wish we could somehow have the opposition parties, especially the smaller ones, combining, right, to form an opposition some sort of a party, one party, or
I
even
hate to
combining with some.
interrupt you, but why won't they? Because of ego.
That's where I was going to
Ego.
go. So you
It's not
said
good enough for
exactly
me
what
to
I'm
be
thinking.
Bantu and Mosiwa and the Vryheidsfront leader, whoever that is, because you never know. I think it's one of the Mulders. They all have to be the leader, so they can't just fall in.
Everyone wants to be a leader, Gareth.
They
Everyone
can't
wants to be a
fall
leader.
in and be useful in a bigger machine. They have to be their own man, which is kind of ridiculous. Because who cares?
And that is harming us, because if we don't have that stronger kind of, if the opposition parties cannot build something together and combine, that weakens their case against the ANC, right? It leaves people very much divided, and they divided as well. There's no stronger fight against the governing party, which is the ANC.
But then
Why?
they're just a
Because
coalition
everybody wants to lead.
But then they're just a coalition of the disgruntled. I think what we then need to actually be talking about is the fact that what we don't have is we don't have true politicians, because the other thing about politics is about corralling people's interests into one place where they can vote together, vote as a bloc in order to be able to move. There is absolutely, and there's a reason why parliament sits in that horseshoe shape, right? Because the extreme left and the extreme right are really actually close to each other. But what we don't have is we don't have individuals, even a Mishwe, even a Kenneth Mishwe or a Bantu Holomisa, their politicking ability is really not at a place where they are able to corral all of the individual interests of all of these various smaller parties to a place where they can find common ground and use that as the platform. So we don't have that kind of politics, and we don't have that kind of political leadership.
Yeah. I do think that's a good point. Oh, okay. So let's move on.
But it will be interesting. But it will be interesting to see what Mmusi Maimane can do, because what he does have is he does have the experience. He does have the experience of kind of mobilizing people on the ground. So it will be interesting to see what it is that he can do going into 2024.
I mean, isn't it true that all of these people have some ability that we could harness? Like, all of them have some traction with a crowd. All of them have some constituency, but on their own, it's hardly effective. And these grand coalitions where you need 23 parties to cobble together a majority in a tiny little town. It's really a waste of time, and we know that they're not going to be able to hold in the long run. So it would be more sensible for us as voters to not be swayed by this nonsense. Let's just be clear about this. You've basically got three options, and really, at this stage, this is the only sensible way I can see it working, unless some incredible, charismatic, brilliant party comes together with all the people that we like and none of the ones that we don't. And I don't see that as a reality. So you got three options. You can vote for the ANC and hope that they change and that they'll be better, but then I think you're chasing fool's gold. You can vote for the DA, or you can vote for the EFF. That's all you got. Right now, let's be realistic. That's what you got. Do you agree or do you disagree?
Well, I think, you see, my view is that given where Action SA comes from, I think how they did last year, they have potential. So I think people should consider them as well. But you are exactly right. So you have those three major parties, of which I'm strongly, as you know, I'm strongly against the ideas of the EFF and the ANC as well. But people, I think they should give the DA a chance. That's just my view. And also the work that has been done by Herman Mashaba as well last year's local elections. He has potential. So if they can add that one in this top three as well, I think that would be better for South Africa. People must stop starting parties.
Yeah, but they must stop starting parties. But I don't mind. I don't mind if we need a healthy environment for new parties to start. And there are lots of people with brilliant ideas who just haven't found a home in any of the existing parties. I get that. But I think when it comes to trying to get a government working, we need to hold our noses for some things. I know, for example, like Phumi, you have your misgivings about Herman Mashaba. And if you were to vote for Herman Mashaba, you would have to hold your nose about certain things. If you were to vote for the EFF, you'd have to hold your nose for a lot more things. If you had to hold your nose for the DA, you'd also have to probably have 3 nostrils blocked. But I understand that all of us would like to have some party that would tick all the boxes. It's like having a relationship with somebody. You want them to be perfect. They must look great. They must make you feel great. They must be as clever or as dumb as you are. They must be as into the things that you are as you are. It's just impossible. Like you have to settle for less in a relationship. And I think the same is true here. But don't settle for so much less that you end up with worse than what we've currently got. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it's about least
who is
worst.
So the current conversation that is happening, that is being driven almost in every sphere that you look, is the issue of coalition governments. You know, and I've said this before on the show, is my issue with parties like the DA or even the EFF is that they have taken a posture of being the opposition. They have not taken the posture of being the government, of what it is. And this is when you talk about holding your nostril, right?
Hold on, that isn't entirely true. I mean, the DA is the government in the Western Cape, and we have seen what the result of them being in government can deliver. So I don't know whether it's the leader nationally, whether it's John Steenhuisen's fault, where it may well be that he's not this great leader that we expect from a party in opposition, but he is not, to me, his personality and character is not the most important part of this. They have proven they can govern at a provincial and a city level. Yes?
I think on a national level, the DA takes a posture that they and we've heard it. You know, we've heard it from Helen Zille before. We've heard it from many quarters within the DA that they believe that they are a strong opposition, and they're probably a 20% of a party that can hold the ANC to some kind of standard and get them to work in a way that they want them to work. And I think, what is it, in Sunday's paper, actually, there was an article 2 weeks ago, a group of representatives from all of these parties, the ANC, the EFF, the DA, the VF, UDM, all of them, they went to Belgium on some kind of mission to find out how the coalition parties or the coalition government in Belgium is working. And that, for me, is where the issues lie, right? Is you cannot take all of the parties that are in government and say, how are we all going to work together in some kind of coalition? If you had 2 or 3 parties coming together to say, we have commonalities in these 3 places, and how could we be the 3 parties that become a coalition that can hold the ANC to account? Or be a coalition that can lead this country. This is what falls apart in the Johannesburg City Council. This is what falls apart at Nelson Mandela Municipality, because the guys are trying to say everybody can come together at the same time and create some kind of coalition together. No,
but, I mean,
if you've got 2 or 3 parties, then you're able to.
Aren't you nitpicking and setting a much higher standard for the DA than you do for any other party by saying this? Because all we want from the ANC is just any sign, any distant heartbeat of competence, and there is none. And we're happy to accept that's the standard in the ANC. With the EFF, we wait for Julius to say something sensible, and he often does, and we think, that's what we were waiting for. But with the DA, we expect a level of competence and a level of assiduousness which we don't seem to apply to other parties. All I'm saying is I don't see a fair standard being applied to all the parties at the same time. And it's fine for us to criticize the ANC or to criticize the EFF, but when we criticize the DA and we say, it's their attitude that they still think of themselves as an opposition party and all of this stuff, those aren't the major stumbling blocks we have with Herman Mashaba, or with Bantu Holomisa, or with Musiwa, or with Julius. We seem to impose a different set of standards on the DA, which is, I'm a bit confused by that. Is their standard not how well do you govern? In which case we have an example in the Western Cape. Clearly it works. That seems to me to be persuasive. No?
No.
Just to,
It okay, Phumlani, you go.
no, I wanted to speak about to add on what Gareth is saying. There has been a question of is there. Some people have argued that there is no alternative, which I have disagreed with. There are alternatives to the ANC in South Africa, and one of them is the DA. And when I say that, I get accused of being the DA supporter or member, of which really I'm not. I'm just saying to South Africans there is an alternative. There is a party that does have experience in governing and in governing a province, in addition to the some metropolitan places in the country. So there is an alternative that I believe can work for South Africa. And one thing to add as well, when it comes to coalitions won't work. For parties that govern in a coalition, they don't have to be too ideologically different. That's why we've been seeing this the collapsing of these coalitions, because you find in some instances that you have people who are so ideologically different. So rather have people whom really kind of, at least there are minimal sort of things that you, on basic principles that you agree upon, then you can try and govern on something. But if you are too opposed, like if the DA and the EFF, the far left Leninist sort of Marxist EFF, and the DA that is more kind of pro-market, pro-business, pro-individual liberty, you are not going to achieve much, really. It's going to be little that you achieve.
I don't think that it is holding anybody to a different standard. The same standards that I apply to the DA is the same standards that I keep saying, even with him and Mashaba's party, is you've got to convince me that what you stand for and what you will be able to deliver. And all I'm saying is I hear that the DA is able to do it in the Western Cape, for some parts of the Western Cape. Why are they failing to translate that message to the rest of the country? In the same way that I keep saying to you, the EFF has plateaued because their messaging is also unable to translate to the rest of the country. They may resonate with a small urban youth, but the reason why they are unable to grow anywhere else in the country is because we are largely a rural country, right? And their message does not translate into those areas. That's why they have
No, we
plateaued
don't.
as a party.
I don't think we're a rural country anymore. I think that the only parts of the country that really matter anymore are the urban areas. There are far more people living in the urban areas. There are far more people.
No,
who are
KZN is
desperate.
still the most populous country in the most populous province in the country.
Yes, but KZN is not the most important manufacturing engine, or the place of most jobs, or the place of most opportunity.
But that's not how we vote. We vote
No,
by where you are.
But then KZN, as the most populous province, should try and stand on its own 2 feet instead of using Joburg money. And I know I'm being pro Joburg on this, but like you, Phumi, I live in and work in Joburg. So the fact is that we can't. Again, you even said it now. The DA, you hear the DA delivers to certain parts of the Western Cape. Well, the ANC doesn't deliver to any parts of the rest of South Africa. So again, we may be creating a double standard here. Because if you're delivering to certain parts of the place that you're in charge of, and by and large, I see the Western Cape growing and becoming more successful, making itself energy independent. Certainly the infrastructure seems to be maintained. They seem to be building more things. If you take that road from the airport to town, you see all the houses that have been built, and you see the solar panels, and you see the infrastructure that's been put in on soil that's only this deep, because it's actually not arable land. I mean, it's the worst part that the apartheid government decided to give to black and colored people to live in. We know what happened in the past, but they've made it a whole lot more habitable than it's ever been before. And of course, you can also see Gugulethu, Khayelitsha. These places have enormous, enormous challenges. But certainly more progress has been made in Khayelitsha and Gugulethu than has been made in Tembisa. And that is a reflection on the ANC and their incompetence, not on the DA's lack of being perfect in the Western Cape.
Guys, the ANC's incompetence is without doubt. I think we all agree that there is a level of incompetence that is astounding when it comes to the ANC, right? That we agree on. And the frustrations that people have, we agree on. And what I am saying to you, and this is not an apology for the ANC, it is a throwing down the gauntlet for the DA. When you have got, as the DA seems to have, a product that you can sell, why are they unable to move their product? Why are they unable to move their product? The question for me will remain. And this is also why Herman Mashaba, who came out of the DA, right, is all of these little things are the things that erode the brand that is the DA and what the DA can achieve and what the DA can show the people of South Africa and can lead. And these little things are the things that, and again, I will say to you, we don't vote by what this province is giving what money to the fiscal budget. We vote by where you are and what you hear the parties promise you and then deliver for you.
I don't disagree with you at all. And I don't want to labor this point too much because I think it'll get boring. And, Phumi, you and I think we agree on so much stuff that people find the burning platform sometimes to be predictable. But I think here, again, you even say little things, but I don't disagree that they have communication issues. And maybe they need to hire some consultants, and God knows they've tried over the last years to get people to help them to communicate their successes and to propose things to voters that will get more voters excited. But I don't know if there's anything more important than competence and delivery. And if competence and delivery are the only things that you should be measured by, then they are streets ahead of everyone else. And that's undeniable. I just don't think that, it's fair for us to expect them to be perfect, but for everyone else to just do one thing right. And that's the way it seems to me to be at the moment. And even when we look at like the Musis and the Hermans, and listen, I think I'm warmer to Herman Mashaba than you are, Phumi. And in some ways, I find him. Yeah, and in some ways, I find some of his policies and ideas to be completely distasteful. I thought that the way that he made coalitions with the EFF and did backdoor deals with them, I thought that was reprehensible. And I find myself in a position now where I think I'm unable to vote for Herman Mashaba again. And I think that a lot of people probably feel that way. Many people feel that way about the DA. They look at the way that so many people who've left the DA were left because they were treated badly. There are still allegations that the party hasn't really transformed. There are all kinds of things that you could throw at them, but all of those things put together, to me, would be a less of a blight than the things that we're dealing with in some of the much bigger parties, like the ANC. Well, it's the only bigger party.
Yeah, it is. Just you see, we tend to speak a lot about the DA's. Let's stick to the DA for a second. About the DA's failure to communicate, to relate to people, to to do what, to be able to convince people to vote for it. We are always critical of how it fails to present something that can attract people. But we hardly speak about also the voter. I have been very much critical of the voter in South Africa. I think our voters have been very much ignorant, given where the state of the country is, and the fact that we can continue voting for the same people, even though we see the challenges of crime, the challenges of shocking unemployment rates, the blackouts, and so on. Yet we continue to put the same people into power and say that there is no alternative. So I think it's very much important not to always blame. People tend to always say, well, it's the political parties, they're not selling something to people. No, the voter is also in a democracy. The voter needs to be informed. The voter needs to see that something is wrong, and therefore I need to change the state of the country I need to vote for an alternative. And I think our voters have failed us in that sense in South Africa. We should not leave them out of this. It doesn't make sense.
If you consider politics as a game of sport, right? The job of a sports team, which is the political party, is to get its fans to the stadium, It is the job of that sports team to get its fans to the stadium, to get its fans to support it, right? And when we consider who the voter is in South Africa, and there are so many aspects to who the voter is and why they vote the way that they vote, and also considering the fact that as we look at the numbers today, we have got a declining voters roll. So even though people are still showing up, we've had 5 elections, and the number is steadily steadily declining, which means more and more people are opting out of the system. More and more people are just saying, this is not worth it for me to show up. And again, that is the job.
When are you going to take responsibility?
The job of the political party, like the job of a soccer club, is to get its fans to the stadium.
And
when you talk about when we're going to talk about the job of the voter, we also have to consider that we sit in a country of 60 million people, where the median age of people in this country is 25, 26 years old. That person, 25, 26-year-old, that person needs to be educated about their responsibility as a civic, their civil duty.
The best news is that former President Jacob Zuma has not discounted the possibility of re-entering the political fray. This is exciting, is it not? Is this not the solution to all of our problems? I mean, objectively, South Africa was better under Zuma. So maybe we need him back.
Gareth, you say that's a new joke. You say that's a new joke. But actually, for a lot of people, you know, you and I living in the city may complain about having intermittent power because we've always had power, and now that the power grid is failing us, it irritates us to no end. But if you are a person living out in Khalishiwe, for instance, and you come from a reality where you never had power, having power 3 times a week is a hell of a difference, right? And that's the reality. That's the truth of of the matter, is that this country has multiple realities. And those multiple realities for you and I sitting here in Joburg and sitting in Cape Town and sitting in Durban are not necessarily the same as 60-70% of this country.
I was not joking when I said things ran better. At least we knew what we were dealing with Jacob Zuma. And people get uncomfortable when you say this, but we knew we were dealing with someone who was greedy and who was corrupt and who had friends who would help to facilitate corruption. But at least they kept things running, more or less. Okay, better than Cyril's government. And I mean, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed is king. So let's just look at how we are at the moment, and let's look at how we were 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, when the 2010 World Cup was on, who was our president? Jacob Zuma. And I know that's, you know, really Sepp Blatter was. But that was probably the highlight of post 1997 government, was Sepp Blatter as president. Let's not forget that.
Well, my view is that I think people forget, it's easy to forget, under Jacob Zuma, South Africa's state really declined. Even when you look at the GDP per capita, on GDP per capita terms, we declined as a country, we got poorer, right? The state capture cost about, I think it was plus $6 billion that was basically looted. That money could have been used to achieve a lot of things. We look at things like public debt as well, unemployment rates, they kind of skyrocketed. Really, South Africa made huge losses, or the gains that we got in our democracy. We saw those gains being reversed a lot under Jacob Zuma's administration. Now, people say, well, there weren't as much, load sheddings under Jacob Zuma, but really, those guys were not maintaining the infrastructure at Eskom. So there was a lot of mismanagement. So they sort of postponed the matter to it's now happening at this point, because really there was not of any sort of commitment to fix the issues. So let's not forget, guys, that Jacob Zuma's administration was damaging to the country.
We always talk about the president, but let's talk about some people who are just on the next level down and who are still around, trying to make a living and still trying to convince us that they are part of the solution, not the problem. And we see Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, who I believe is telling people that one of the reasons that she would be a great and visionary candidate for the future of South Africa is because she's been in so many portfolios. I mean, the fact that she hasn't necessarily run any of them particularly well is besides the point, but she seems to be convinced by the fact that she's jumped around so many times now that she knows a little bit about everything and she would be better than all the alternatives. And we've got Pravin Gordhan, who's also moved around like a chess piece on a board. And both of those people are just two out of the many examples. And we know so many of the names in cabinet who've really just been shuffled and shuffled and shuffled. And we call it a cabinet reshuffle because it's the same deck of cards. Nothing ever changes. Why is it that we are so short of good people, not only in the ANC, but generally? Phumi, you said it yourself just now, young people who want to enter the political fray. And even if you look at the Youth League in the ANC, the average age is now well over 30, probably even 35. Why is it that so many of those apathetic voters are young people? And does it have anything to do with the fact that all the people that we are reshuffling in and out of government offices are old?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There are too many old ideas and there are too many old realities at play. You know, people are unable to think of what South Africa needs to move to and become. Somebody in a conversation a couple of weeks ago, somebody said to me, and that's why this is such an important time in our country right now, right? Is that there's a reason why the children of Israel wandered the desert for 40 years, is because they had to die out. All of the people that had to leave Egypt. That's why it takes a generation, right?
Yeah.
All the old people that saw the world through the guise of being a slave under Pharaoh had to die off in order for them to be able to cross Jordan into a promised land. And South Africa is in that place. All of the old people who have an old view of what South Africa should be and could be, this is the end for all of them. I think every one
Yep.
of those old people
Wow.
need to be thrown out.
You're making me think of what Muzi Kuzwayo said, and it upset so many people about, he's so rude about the elderly and our elders. But he said it before, and he said those people have to die out before this country can really change. And my goodness, they're taking a long time.
And we're here. But it also, one of the things is there is a level of respect that people kind of imbue on older people, right? It is also a matter of, and this is where I absolutely disagree with Phumlani, is this is why we need new parties and new blood. Because with all the will in the world, the ANC, even if they had new young leaders moving into those positions, will never be able to change who it is in its DNA. It was a great car in its time, but the time it must be put out to pasture now, right? And
Yes.
this is why we need fresh blood, fresh thinking, new young people with new ideas of how we can get our country back to the top that it can be. And that's why we need new parties. It's not going to be Bantu Holomisa thinking differently. It's not going to be an IFP thinking differently or young people in the IFP. It is young people who have to step up to the challenge, and young people who have the interest of this country at heart, young people who have the knowledge, young people, and we have them in bucket loads, but they opt to leave the country because they would rather take the easy route instead of taking the hard route and knuckle down and be part of the solution.
Do you want to add anything to that, Phumlani? Because I do want to refer to something Pumi's just mentioned, but go ahead.
Yeah, so, young people are going to leave the country if you have 71 people murdered per day, which is a shocking murder rate, even by global standards. They are going to leave if you have almost half of the workforce jobless, right? And 75% of the unemployed, it's young people. With dismal education, they are going to go and look for opportunities elsewhere. If you can make more money overseas in other emerging markets than here, then they will go there. So again, we cannot, those decisions, people make them because of how the current people who are governing the country have mismanaged the economy and the country as well, and therefore they opt for those options, which is one of them is to leave the country. Now, on the issue of very much our very old governance that we have, older people, and I'm at a conference here in Sun City this week, and I listened to, I think there's a gentleman called Joel Nichitenze.
From the ANC.
He has really served in serious positions in the ANC, and he gave a talk last night. When I was listening to him, really, we need a different shift of mindset on how we talk about issues. He's still stuck to this old way of looking at things in South Africa, especially very much on racial terms. Of how, a reference to the past, looking at the past instead of the future, proposing more government interventionist approach to the economy. I'm like, my view is that we need sort of more ideas that will be focused on the now and the future, and that need to be, at least in my view, very much pro business, driven by the purpose to advance the powers of the market, to get more people employed and all that. So I'm saying that if we can have that, young people are disengaged. Now, two things are happening with young people. They are disengaged, but they are also, if they do engage, they are very much voting more of left-wing kind of parties. Even in America as well, Bernie Sanders, the far left or the left-wing guy, has a huge support over the years, right? Many of that support, the young people are supporting him. In South Africa, the youth also votes very much EFF when they do vote. EFF has very much a big chunk of the vote from the young people. So those things are happening. And when it comes to education, Phumi, I do agree that we need to educate people as to the importance of voting, right? But I think that's more done from a governance sort of government perspective, that we create awareness of the importance of people engaging in their democracy. But even still, though, those people, even though we do educate them, they will also need to take some responsibility to be engaged, to learn, and to make a difference in their country, because we cannot sort of remove that responsibility as voters in a democracy from them.
Things like murder rates, for me, and high crime are, they're symptoms of a broken system, and they can be turned around. I think about New York in the 90s, in the early 90s, people were getting shot in the streets. And look where New York is today. Those things can be turned around, but it takes a will from the people to want to make it. I mean, Joel Nichitenze is exactly one of the people. He is a brilliant mind, and at some point in time was one of the main thinkers and drivers of policy coming out of Luthuli House, Shell House and Luthuli House. But he's 65 years old. Of course, he only sees the world in a prism of black and white. And this is my point, is we actually have to think a little bit broader than black, white, left, right. All of those things no longer hold water, and this is possibly one of the reasons why young people, and in our office we talk about this a lot, because we're constantly thinking about what it is that we need to do, even within our organization, to shift and move and make a difference, right, with our clients, with our country as a whole. And maybe the things that resonate with young people are some of those things, because the thing about looking at more than just oneself and thinking broader than just an individual are things that resonate with young people. But for as long as we look at it as it's a left-wing policy or a right-wing policy, maybe we need to look at all the policies and look at what it is that works for individuals and for the country as a whole today, without being so dogmatic about where we stand on the number line.
Well, I mean, here's what worries me, is that we're losing the people we really need. I mean, here's a story this is not new. That comes up every year. This is from Business Tech. More skilled black professionals are leaving South Africa. If you look at the white population of South Africa, and this is to your point, Phumlani, if this tiny percentage, 8% of the population, is still the biggest problem, and they are in decline, and they are getting smaller and smaller, then I think people who are proffering this as as a problem are not looking at the big picture. I mean, those 4 million odd white people who are still in South Africa and want to be here or have no option but to be here are going to have to make a go of it. And they are increasingly going to be less and less of a problem to the people who don't like them. So let's stop talking about that. It's not a big deal.
No, it's not a big deal. The race thing is it's a card that's being used by politicians to manipulate us in politics. Even when you do the survey,
manipulate us.
Yeah, I mean, even if you do the surveys that have been done, the race thing, to people it doesn't appear at the top.
Right.
It's something that either it's not there or right at the bottom. People talk about the issues of unemployment,
Right.
crime, and so on. So it's not. It's something that's being it's politicians who beat the drum on this thing as if it's something that matters to people. And by the way, the existence of the white population, it's a positive in the country, right? Just like it's a positive for other racial groups as well. And they are contributing. They are participating in the economy. That they sell, they buy, they have businesses, and also they are largely a middle class. And that is the white population. All those things are positive and good, and we need more of that in the country. So to make them as these people who are sort of more of to be obsessed and see them as a negative, and that they are declining, for me, as per the chart you've showed, is concerning. It's something that Ramaphosa must look into. And think about how do we sort of encourage people to stay? What are they doing wrong in governance? As Phumi was saying, the issues that I mentioned, even the murder rate, sure, it can be reversed, but the leaders have to reverse that. You see, and for people who are participating in the market, if the leaders, they let them down, they can either choose to leave, and they do have their choice, and many of them choose to do so.
I want to quickly turn our attention, because we've only got 5 minutes or so left, overseas. We've got to look at the UK and the meltdown in the UK's economy. But also, Phumi, someone here has asked for your thoughts on what's going on in Iran, which we actually haven't referred to at all in the Burning Platform, despite the last 2 weeks being absolutely groundbreaking and earth-shattering. In Iran, we see a huge revolution taking place, even though they're trying to play it down, over one woman who was taken aside by the morality police and victimized over her hijab falling down or something silly like that. Anyway, the women of Iran and a lot of the men of Iran are standing up to the government and saying, no more. We're sick of this. I mean, this used to be a country which was much more secular, that was much more about a society that has a very ancient history, which is in some ways the antithesis of what has been created under the Ayatollahs. And maybe you want to comment on that and the UK, and both of you have a go.
It's fascinating for me to watch what's happening in Iran. And as we talk about it here all the time, it's always about the will of the people. The people decide when they have had enough, and the people decide when they want change, and the way that change needs to be. You know, we were just looking at the world population and where the populations are. The thing about the world is we cannot any longer look at the world only through our perspective to say what is right is what we believe is right. It is what is right for the people living in the environment. And when you see what is happening in Iran right now, is the people of Iran are going, we do not agree with this way of living and this way of being, and we're not going to stand for it anymore. And that's why they are standing up to the government. But for as long as things were working for them, they were happy to go with what it was, what is, you know, and this is the thing. And no matter how abhorrible it may be for the rest of us on the outside looking in, this is what we're seeing in Iran.
What do you say, Phumlani? Anything about Iran, or do you want to look at the UK?
Well, I do agree with Phumi that when people have said it's enough, people can say it's enough when they are ready to say it's enough. You know, when they want to say it's enough. So I'm quite. This is putting much pressure to the Iranian sort of political leadership, and it's very much motivating in a way that here's a country that is known for decades of being sort of very much hardly tolerates such things. The protests and the movements, yet and the way they treat women there as well. Very much little freedoms for women in the Middle East. Yet we are seeing the women in Iran sort of taking it up and making their case. So I think that is very much encouraging, and it's something that we should applaud around the globe, and hopefully African people will do the same in countries where there is that kind of there is some repression, that they will mobilize against their governments. Now the UK, I think Kwasi Kwarteng, the finance minister, look, he shouldn't. I don't think he should pull back. There's much pressure. He's being told that he needs to reverse the plan to avoid the market kind of chaos. No, I don't think he should, because I mean the policies that he puts forward are policies that are very much well known for a long while. Now it's a matter of the investors. They need to adjust, and if he does believe if he and his boss, the prime minister, do believe that this is what the policy will achieve, then they must stick to that. They should not, politically, it would be bad if they do reverse, and it wouldn't be the good thing as well, because the policies that they are proposing, the tax cuts, aren't a bad thing. They do stimulate the economy, so they must persist on that, and the investors, they will adjust and move on. Markets go up and down. It is what it is.
Pums, what do you want to throw in on the UK? What do you say about the is it a meltdown? Are we overplaying this just because, again, the UK has been the leading economy in Europe for the longest time? I mean, certainly outside of the EU for a while as well. Financially, they're still the world's hub of banking and of lending and of financing. So what do we think's really going on here? What is this all about?
By the way, the trends were already in the negative direction even before this plan. So the pound, it's weakening, and all that. Just the economy wasn't in any. So this is a way of stimulating the economy.
Okay.
Is the sun finally setting on the empire? Is the sun finally setting on the empire?
Well, I thought that the Queen's death was not just symbolic. I do think it's the end of it. Really.
It is, Gareth. It is. When I saw the article, and I was reading it this morning with the IMF criticizing the UK's budget, mini budget, I was fascinated to see how things have turned. Right, we're used to seeing the IMF criticizing what is now called Global South and what they do with their monetary policies and what they're doing with their tax cuts and. But it's also just looking at it worldwide, right? So looking at what's happening with the Fed, we're going to see similar movements happening across the pond, as the British would say. But this, and unfortunately, because we have an inept government, would be great for us, right? Because this would mean that money is looking for a new home, a new place to invest, new places to go. And we are used to working in a high inflationary environment, right? These inflation rises here in South Africa, that's the norm for us. And so we should ideally be able to work with what we have and be able to attract. But we're going to squander this opportunity as South Africa. I think we're going to squander this opportunity, and we're not going to do what needs to be done because unfortunately we're busy with our own internal squabbles. But what's happening in the UK is very fascinating for me to watch. It really is. And it's not just the UK, it's the whole world that we're watching. And maybe it's time that the shifting sands, and it's an opportunity for some people to make money if they're watching in the right places.
Sure, but let's not break the fence until we know why it was built. That's what Chesterton always said, and it makes me nervous when we go, oh, well, whatever comes next will be better than what we've got, and then it isn't. We've seen governments make those terrible decisions. I've just got to refer here quickly to K&A, who's made a few interesting points throughout the show. It's a bit like a budget prepared by Des van Rooyen. So I'll give K&A the last say in today's show. Thank you, everybody. Have an awesome day, and we will be back next Thursday. Thank you so much, Phumlani, for being part of the show, as you always are available to be. And we would love to hear from you. You can send us an email, contact@cliffcentral.com. And if it's something for Phumi, you send it to me and I'll send it on to her as well. We will see you tomorrow at 6 a.m. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Thursday.